How are we doing? This is Jeremy TrueFit MN. So this exercise I'm going to demonstrate is about the lateral pelvic drop. So we're going to be utilizing a step or a box, or in my case I've had a couple of yoga blocks here that I'll stand on and gives me a little bit elevation to work with. And I'll also have a wall feature to kind of provide some support. So the purpose of this is to give a little bit of mobility and freedom to the two hemispheres of the hip joint. All right, so if we have the sacrum and the back plate of the center of the pelvis, and then you have your two rounded edges of the hips here, the iliums, right? So we want to be able to produce a little bit of rotation and a little bit of lateral pelvic shifting, just to create some gentle motion along the SI joint in the back of the hips. And that's going to alleviate some of the problems and tension from just having some imbalances in the hips, and that causing some problems in the lower back or even down to the leg. So essentially, if you were to stand with both feet close together, right, and you were to transfer weight into like the right leg, for example, and then you took a step forward, and then if you just shifted that leg back, what you get is you'll start to notice, if you pay attention like close to a mirror, is you'll get a rotation in the hip, and it'll be pivoting front to back, and there'll be a little bit of lateral shifting, right? So that's like a really low-key feature here of what happens when the femur head inserts into the acetabular joint of the hip, right? And it's going to be loading and kind of producing a torque on the pelvis, all right? Now we want to allow that to have full open mobility, and we want to have good control. We also want to improve the communication about how the foot stabilizes forces into the ground while the hip does that pattern. So that's where the step comes in handy. All right, so the key features here are that we have an elevated platform with a few inches of room to let the other leg kind of work up and down. All right, and so with this stance leg that's on the step, so I could be on the bottom of a stairway sideways, and I'm just gonna like put my fist against a surface here just to kind of keep me upright, but not necessarily like leaning away. So I want to try to maintain good center of mass right here. All right, good balance and alignment. This knee right here needs to stay pretty rigid, all right? So as we start to drop down the hip, it's gonna be really like almost intentional by your like bias, all right? Or it's almost gonna feel reactive to wanna squat that knee a little bit and to flex it. But you're gonna need to focus and not let that happen. We wanna try to lock that leg out and let that hip here drop down anyway. You're gonna notice that that hip is gonna shift towards the wall. And then as a counter, I want to use the oblique and the QL muscle here, and I want to hike up this side of the ilium or the hip structure here, right? And so that's going to pull in on the pelvic floor muscle groups, right? That also have they have a big impact on how the SI joint allows force to transfer from hemisphere to hemisphere across that SI joint, so or the pelvis on the back side. And so essentially I just want to work on hiking this hip as high as I can, dragging that heel. So think about the heel more than the toe, so that we can kind of keep the hips square with each other as much as possible, but you're feeling a really big time amount of torque on these little tiny muscles that help keep that hip rigid and strong, but still we want to let it have some freedom there. And so pick one leg, do about 8 to 10 lifts and drops, and then I would have you switch around or turn around and get 8 to 10 on the other leg as well. Maybe you'll notice a little bit better pattern on one side versus the other, but in general, that really does help improve the function of the hips and then what that means for lower back and legs.